how do you do? My name is Harry Wetzel. Thanks for coming. It's the 80s, darling. It is the last days of 1983. 1984 itself is just weeks away. I made sure to read the book 1984 when it was still 1983 so that I would be prepared for what would come. And, you can only be so prepared for anything. The future is unknown. Anyhow, it's the last days of 1983. I'm working at the Winter Garden. And one of the bartenders at the Winter Garden is a director and a brilliant friend of mine, Leonardo. One of the other bartenders at the Winter Garden is a playwright, Kenny. And they're both pretty brilliant individuals. And Kenny came up with this, very serious, sort of heavy show. And Leonardo was going to direct it. And he used Randy, one of the bartenders, who was an actor. And he used me, who was a t-shirt salesperson. Right. So it was sort of all Winter Garden cast and company. Yes. So we rehearsed at Leonardo's apartment at all odd hours and at Randy's apartment at all odd hours in the middle of the night, because we all had jobs and stuff and it was hard to get together, and we rehearsed. And Leonardo is a very cerebral, very brilliant, very cerebral director, and there was so much work that he made us go through to come up with these characterizations. Yeah, he didn't suffer any of us fiddling around. Well, we didn't fiddle around, of course, but Leonardo was serious. We called him Eeyore. Anyhow, he was very brilliant. And now comes time for the show to open. It's also, zero budget theater. Leonardo chased around and found a couple of uniforms, outfits for Randy and me. And he somehow procured a pretty fancy venue, a nightclub and bar called 5 and 10, no exaggeration. I'm not exaggerating. No, and it was a real venue for rock and roll bands and artists and singers and stuff would come there, and we were one of the attractions. One of the nights were, what about the Oslo Pact? Right. So it was a hit. It was a smash hit. It was one night only, and it was pretty much a full house, if you could call the bar room a house. And there was a lot of agents and a lot of important people there, and we had so much positive, reinforcement after the show. We had a great time there, and that was what about the Oslo Pact. It was a lot of hard work. We had a lot of opportunity to do some real acting and work with, I got a chance to work with a very good actor, Randy, and I got a chance to work with a very good director, Leonardo. It was a great time we had. And then that show closed, and I'm back to work at the Winter Garden Theater. All right. Oh, I wanted to tell you a couple other things about canned salmon. Yes, you remember down at Shuttle Theater. It was guerrilla theater in the purest sense of the word. It was zero budget. We costumed it ourselves. All the cast brought in our own clothing. I played 3 roles. I played a judge. I had my own choir robe. I played a newscaster. I had, just a sport coat and a tie. And they provided me with a bullhorn, a state-of-the-art bullhorn. And then I played a junkie in the park later on. Right. And the junkie in the park actually had to kiss Jimmy D full on the mouth. Yeah, I know. It's fine. I'm not welded to the binary. I don't even care. But then there was the rehearsal where we had to kiss in real life for the first time. Because we were rehearsing, this is the part where we kiss. Right. And then Virgil, our director, says, you guys are going to have to start kissing from now on. And we're like, okay. And we're sort of standing around a little nervous. Good for Jimmy D. He grabbed me and he gave me a big smooch. And he says, all right, now we've done it. It's fine. Okay, are we good? We're good. I'm like I say, I didn't have any problems. I'm not welded to the binary. I just wasn't attracted to him. Anyhow, I also ran lights for the show. I should say I ran light. There was one 75-watt bulb in an aluminum scoop that was the entire lighting plot for the canned salmon. There was one scoop up there on a clip just downstage to pretty much light the whole stage area, and it was all lights up and black out. And there was a cord with a clicker on the end. I stood behind the audience going click, lights on, and click at the end of the scene on the blackout line. I'd go do my scene, I'd run off stage, wait for the blackout line, and click off the light. There was one scene when I was the judge where everybody was on stage, and the scene began with everyone on stage and ended with everyone on stage. So I had to take the cord, trail it over the audience's head, and come on stage holding the clicker. And click, I started the scene. And we have this is the courtroom scene, obviously, where the bum, Jimmy D's character, the nihilist bum punk, gets sentenced to jail, and as the judge, I sentence him, and you're sentenced, and the scene's over. Click, blackout, and I run off, and that was how the lighting went for canned salmon. Now, there was a bar across the street from the Shuttle Theater where we would drink every night. And one night, Jimmy D and Virgil and me and Jimmy D's beguilingly lovely girlfriend are standing around talking. Her name is Kitten, and she's K-Y-T-N, by the way. She's practically a supermodel. She's tall, she's curvy, she's trim, she's got long flowing hair, chiclets for teeth. I'm sort of crushing on her a little bit, right? And then Kitten, just out of the blue, we're standing around drinking in the bar, and Kitten, just out of the blue, says, Jimmy gets to kiss Harry during the show. I'm kind of jealous. And I'm like, are you trying to get me killed? Jimmy's a street tough. He would just as soon mangle me into paint as let me kiss her. And now the problem is, I want to kiss her. Just chalk it up to another unrequited crush in Manhattan. I got a meat hook on my shoulder, on my arm here, and that's where I keep my heart. I yank it out of my chest and just stick the heart right there on my sleeve and walk around. Dump. Anyhow, we're back at the Winter Garden Theater. What about the Oslo Pact is closed, canned salmon is closed, and I'm working, and then another job opportunity comes up. A slightly better paying job as a tech director. This is in theater. It's not acting, but it's acting adjacent. It's better than selling T-shirts, sweatshirts, records, cassettes, books, and buttons. And so this is over at the Double Image Repertory Company. Right. It's they don't have a home of their own, so they are at the Puerto Rican Traveling Theater over on 49th Street by 9th Avenue. And as tech director, I have to oversee the changing of the two sets. There were two sets that they were going to run in actual repertory. Take the one down, put the other one up, take the one down, put the other one up, back and forth every week. And during tech week, during final rehearsals, we had to switch sets every night so that the actors could rehearse every other night. Right. That's what happens in repertory. And so the rehearsals would go on till 11 or 11:30, and sometimes we wouldn't get to start shifting the set until midnight. Thank heavens, closing time at the bars isn't at 2 o'clock in New York like it is in Michigan, because sometimes it's 2:30 or so before we get out of the theater. And I go over to the bar. Now, there was a Blarney Stone. Remember, I've been to a couple of Blarney Stones. They're always a friendly bar with a great steam table. So anyhow, this Blarney Stone over there on Ninth Avenue had bartender Noel, the Irish brogue. And I would go in there and say, Noel, 2. And I was a regular. He knew what to do. He would bring over 2 black and tans, or half and half, if you will. And that was half stout and half ale. I love that. And so I'd get 2 of them, and I'd take the first one and go glug, 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 bam! And that was done. Get that out of the way, and then just sip the other one. And then just sip the other one. Yes. Yes. And so anyhow, that was what happened during the Double Image Repertory Company. There were 2 shows, one called Filthy Rich and one called Savage in Limbo. They were both fantastic shows. They really were. The acting was superb. It really was. But it was just a lot of work shifting these completely different, very heavy sets with a crew who didn't know how to pick up heavy stuff. It was a little disappointing. It was. So it was a lot of work. And when the show closed, then came strike. Never volunteer for anything. Never tell anyone that you know anything. Because the producer says, anybody know how to drive a stick shift? And very foolishly, I said, yeah, I know how to drive a stick. He's like, good! You're driving the moving van. You got to go pick it up at the rent-a-van place, bring it down to the theater, then park the van overnight someplace, and then take the moving van filled with the set up to 128th Street or something like that, and then take the van back to the rent-a-van place. It's because I said, yeah, I know how to drive a stick. That was a lesson hard learned. So came strike day, and we loaded the set into the huge moving van. I went and got the van and drove it over to the theater. And then we loaded the set into the van with a crew who didn't know how to move stuff. And we filled up the van with 2 sets. And then strike is over, and I'm like, what do I do now? And they're like, park the van, and then we'll see you tomorrow at 127th Street. And I go, what do you mean park the van? They said, we don't know, we don't care, bye, good luck. So I drove around the Upper West Side for, an hour and a half looking for a parking place. I'm looking for a parking place. And I can't find one anywhere. It's a movie van. You need 3 or 4 spaces. Or a parking lot that's empty. I eventually saw some police. I flagged them down. I said, fellas, listen, you can see I'm driving this moving van. Do you have any idea where I can park it? I need to find a place where I can park this van. Do you know where a parking lot or some place around here where I could park it? And they looked at me and they said, nope. And I'm like, okay, but you know of a neighborhood or anything where I might? And they're like, nope, good luck. Hope you can find a parking place. Bye. To protect and serve. Anyhow, then I got an idea. I'm dating Beatrice, and she lives down on 10th Street. And when I hang around at Beatrice's place, there's not always a bunch of cars parked. It's not. She lives in sort of an empty-ish neighborhood, and I'm going, okay. I called her up. She was home, and this is great. So I drive the van down to 10th Street, and lo and behold, I found 4 parking meter spaces with no cars, and I parked the van and went in and stayed at Bezos's place. And the next morning, first thing in the morning, I drove it up. I got up at 8 or so and got out on the road because I didn't know how long it would take to get all the way up to 127th or 128th Street. And so I drove it all the way up there first thing in the morning, and I got up there on time eventually. We unloaded the set, and I got the set, and I got the van back to the rent-a-place. And let that be a lesson to you. Anybody says, do you know how to drive a stick? Say, no! Even if you do. Well, So the job at Double Image is over. And I remember my brilliant friend Harold over at the Winter Garden said, if ever a gig ends, whenever a gig ends, you go on unemployment immediately. Yes. The very next day. So that's what I did. I went up to the unemployment office. There was one at 123rd Street or something. And filled out all my forms and stuff. And they said, all right, you're eligible. All you have to do is come in and pick up your check every 2 weeks. You'll also have to come in every other 2 weeks and prove that you're looking for work. And I said, I'm an actor. It is the nature of my occupation that I look for work as much as I can. And they're like, oh, well, we understand that. This is New York. We got a bunch of bum actors on unemployment. Sure, you don't have to come in. Just come in to pick up your check. And I'm like, so that's all I had to do. To go in, take the subway up to Cathedral Station, and go on line C, and pick up my check. And I'd walk home. It was fabulous. And I'd walk home down Broadway, where they say the neon lights are bright, and I'd walk downtown, down to 100th Street, where I was living. And then I said, now we're on unemployment. Now we can pay attention to, what did you come to New York for? I got to pay attention to my acting career. Good. So I started auditioning. I got the newspaper, the theater periodical, Backstage, the weekly, every week. And I went and looked through, and I had a bunch of monologues memorized. And I was very good at cutting out the things, pasting them, and saying, well, I didn't cut them out and paste them after a while. I just circled them. And went down to wherever the audition was. And I got so many auditions. I mean, I had so many auditions, and I had so many monologues memorized that it was great. I would be in the subway on the ride down to the where the audition was, and I'd say, all right, I'm auditioning for whatever this role is, and so I'm going to use this monologue from this show and this other monologue from this other show. And every time I went to an audition, I had 7 or 8 monologues that I would choose from. It was glorious, and I loved doing it. And I got down there pretty early because I don't care. We're made of rubber. We're made out of rubber and steel. We don't need any sleep or anything. I'd get up first thing in the morning and go on downtown. One time, I got there as number 1 in line. And I'm going, oh, this is great. Number 1 in line. You know what I learned? You don't want to be number 1 in line. They're shuffling their papers. They're looking at their coffee. They're not paying attention. They're still picking the sleep out of their eyes. They don't know what's going on, and they're not watching you. I gave a pretty good audition that time when I was number 1 and stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, real good. Did you see what he did? Like, no. Did you? No. Okay. Well, thank you. So anyhow, I learned that. And so forever after, I was number 11 or number 30 or something like that, which is a safer comfort range to be in, between number 11 and number 33. Perfect. I was number 300 when I auditioned for Brighton Beach Memoirs. Yeah, I had an audition for that. I was number 300. And by 6 o'clock at night, they were up to like 110 number auditor. And I go, we're not going to make it to 300 tonight, are we? And they said, no, go home. So that was my audition for Brighton Beach Memoirs. Anyhow, so I'm on unemployment. And a notice comes that there's an audition in Detroit. They're doing a show called Greater Tuna, a 2-person show. And each actor has 10 roles. And I'm going, I've got to get in. So more about that later. Like, subscribe, share, and comment. Please do. I'd be very interested to hear what you have to say. All right, whatever you do, keep your shoes on.